The Christmas lights on their porch still glowed like nothing was wrong. Reds and greens blinked rhythmically across the fresh snow as I sat in my parked car, engine running, fingers frozen around the steering wheel. Inside, they laughed. I could hear it through the glass. Cups clinked. The smell of cinnamon rolls leaked through the front door every time someone came in or out. They were celebrating Christmas Eve without me. I watched from across the street, wondering how they could pretend I didn't exist. How my name had vanished from the family group chat. How I'd gone from holding everything together to being written out like a character that didn't test well with audiences. Then the lights flickered. I almost laughed. The power cut out just after sunset. My phone buzzed once. A single name on the screen, Mom. Not even a name, just home. No message. I let it ring. Then another buzz. 47 missed calls. That was when I knew they were scared. But let me take you back to where this started. Not with the blackout, but with the blowout. My name is Cassidy Lane. I'm 28 years old. And this Christmas, I burned the bridge they built with my money and walked away before the smoke cleared. When people talk about Christmas, they talk about magic. Family. Warmth. Hot cocoa in mugs too big for one hand. But for me, it had always been something else. A season of pretending. Matching pajamas. Posed smiles. Lies so thick they felt like tinsel wrapped around my throat. From the outside, we looked perfect. Our holiday cards were printed on linen stock, with everyone grinning in front of our fireplace. My mom wore pearls. My dad carved the ham. My cousin Blake made the toast. I sat at the edge, just out of frame. But behind those glossy cards, I was the financial skeleton key. The unpaid assistant. The one who knew how many overdraft notices my parents got in a year, how much my aunt owed in credit card debt, and how many times Blake had been bailed out before. I wasn't rich. Just responsible. I worked hard. Paid on time. Knew how to stretch a paycheck and still stock a pantry. Which is exactly why they leaned on me. Hard. When Dad had a heart procedure 2 years ago, insurance barely covered the essentials. I covered the rest. When the Wi-Fi went out because the bill was late, I paid it. When they couldn't figure out the car registration, I made the call, paid the fee, emailed the receipt. Over time, my name showed up on every bill that mattered. The cell phones. The gas. The internet. The streaming accounts. I was the one who made the season bright and no one even noticed. The final crack came wrapped in tinsel and silence. A group text just days before Christmas. Who's coming for Eve dinner? I waited for my name. Nothing. I typed, should I bring dessert? Blake replied, you're not invited until you apologize. That was it. No call. No clarification. And not a single person corrected him. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not my sister. The silence was an answer louder than words. Apologize for what, you ask? For questioning why Blake, the family darling, kept asking for money while bragging about his new watch. For pointing out that his so-called business ventures sounded a lot like pyramid schemes. For asking why my bank account was bleeding while his Instagram overflowed with charcuterie boards and designer sneakers. I confronted him at his promotion dinner, which was apparently sacred. I asked why, if he was doing so well, he still needed $300 for a utility bill, just this once. He laughed it off. The table got quiet. I didn't back down. That made me the villain. 2 days later, Mom texted me, you're banned from Christmas until you learn some manners. Not even my name. Not even a period. Just a slash and burn message meant to cut. So I smiled, closed the banking app, and stopped paying every bill they thought would magically take care of itself. That's how we got to Christmas Eve. While they laughed under fairy lights, I was across the street, sipping coffee in my car, watching the glow of their ignorance. Then came the flicker, the blackout. The laughter died inside the house, and my phone buzzed like it was on fire. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And the beginning of everything changing. The day before Christmas Eve, my apartment was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding a mug of peppermint tea that had gone cold in my hands. Outside, A thin layer of frost stretched across the windows, muting the noise of the city. It was the kind of peace people decorate their Pinterest boards with, the kind I'd always associated with holiday movies, but never actually lived through. I wasn't wrapping gifts for anyone but myself. I wasn't making calls to coordinate who was bringing what to dinner. And I definitely wasn't refreshing my banking app, praying some overdraft charge wouldn't sabotage another month. Instead, I was watching my own bank balance stabilize. Slowly. Quietly. Like an injured animal learning it didn't have to flinch anymore. I hadn't told them I'd stopped paying. Not at first. I didn't warn anyone when I removed my card from the family Netflix account. I didn't explain when the phone plan transitioned from Lane family shared to Cassidy only. I didn't even blink when the autopay for the gas bill failed. They would figure it out. Eventually. But what I did do, what no one expected, was track every penny. I opened a spreadsheet. Color-coded it. Created a timeline. Traced every expense I'd covered over the past 3 years. There were over 200 line items. Cell plans. Groceries. Copays, tires, rent, electricity, subscriptions, emergency loans that never returned, interest charges I absorbed because no one understood how credit worked. And every time I highlighted a row, a piece of my shame peeled away. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't overreacting. I had receipts. The next morning, I went out early. The city was still half asleep. I bought a bagel, a real one this time, and walked past storefronts filled with glitter and garlands, thinking about how Christmas used to feel like pressure wrapped in lights. This year, I didn't owe anyone a gift. Or an explanation. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. Finally, I picked up. It was my Aunt Dana, her voice dipped in that syrupy tone she used when she was pretending to care, but only because something wasn't going her way. Hey, sweetie. Quick thing. I think there's a mix-up with the internet bill. Our shows aren't loading. Blake said you might have forgotten the payment. I didn't even pause. No mix-up. I removed my card. Silence. Then a fake laugh. Wait, what? You're joking. I mean, it's Christmas. Exactly, I said, calm as the snow drifting outside. And I decided my gift to myself this year was peace. I ended the call before she could pivot into guilt. Or threats. Or those fake tears she summoned like clockwork. They weren't used to boundaries. But that was no longer my problem. I went home, opened my laptop, and finished the binder. Not a metaphorical binder. A real one. Red, thick, ugly. The kind you'd see in an accountant's office. I printed everything. Labeled the tabs. Added screenshots of every text where they'd asked for money. Cross-referenced dates. Pasted in bank statements. Even included a separate folder labeled emotional costs because, yes, some debts go beyond numbers. That binder became my map. My receipt. My permission slip to stop playing the villain in their fantasy. And I wasn't done yet. When the power failed on Christmas Eve, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel satisfaction either, not exactly. What I felt was stillness. Like a breath I hadn't let out in years had finally left my body, and the silence it made on the way out echoed longer than it should have. Inside their house, candles were being lit in a hurry. I watched the soft glow flicker behind frosted windows, followed by the rising tension of people realizing that something wasn't working, something fundamental had broken, and no one there had the tools to fix it. For once, they couldn't text me. Couldn't ask for a last-minute fix, a payment, a miracle. They'd have to live in the dark. I waited. Just watched. I wasn't even planning to go over. But the 87 missed calls were starting to feel like a scream. The last straw came when my sister, Elise, sent a voice note. I listened to it while standing in my kitchen, the lights of my tiny Christmas tree blinking peacefully in the corner. Her voice shook with frustration, not sadness. You're being dramatic, Cassidy. Mom's in tears. Blake's humiliated. You've made your point. Now grow up and fix this. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Calm. Composed. My tea was still warm. I didn't reply. Instead, I changed clothes. Pulled on boots. Wrapped the binder in a scarf and slipped it into my tote. Then I left. The walk to the house was quiet, the kind of quiet where even the snowflakes sounded like secrets. I stepped up to the porch. No one noticed at first. When I knocked, the door cracked open. My mother's face appeared in the dim candlelight, and I was struck by how tired she looked. Not because of the blackout. Because of all the pretending. She didn't say anything. Just opened the door wider. The room was dim but tense, like the oxygen had been replaced with anxiety. Everyone was there. Dad at the table, Blake on the couch, Elise on her phone, and Dana in the kitchen whispering into a candle like it was a microphone. "I brought this," I said, setting the binder on the table. No one spoke. Dad looked up, eyes bleary. "What is it?" "It's everything. Every bill. Every loan. Every time you said, just this once." Mom made a soft noise, half gasp, half protest. Blake rolled his eyes, but said nothing. I opened it. Page after page slid into view like receipts from a life I hadn't agreed to pay for. Each tab was labeled. Each section was dated. I didn't speak for a long time. Let the silence say what I couldn't. Then I pointed to a page in the middle. "This is the electric bill. I've been paying it for 2 years. I removed my card last week. That's why it's dark." Dana muttered something about being ungrateful. I turned to her. "This isn't about gratitude. It's about boundaries. And none of you respected mine." Blake finally stood. "You could have just told us. You didn't have to make a scene. I did tell you. Over and over. You just didn't listen until the power went out." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "This isn't a fight. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to be clear. I'm not your fixer. Not your backup plan. Not your invisible wallet. From now on, you figure it out." I turned to Dad. "The mortgage transfer you thought Blake set up? That was me. It's gone now. You'll need to call the bank." No one moved. The air felt full of invisible walls, finally being built. I left instructions in the back, I added. Names of providers. Account numbers. Who to call. You're all adults. And with that, I turned, picked up my bag, and walked back out into the cold. The snow had thickened, but I walked lighter. The snow muffled everything, the crunch of my boots, the slow exhale of my breath, the click of my front door unlocking when I finally got home. For the first time in a long while, my apartment didn't feel like a hiding place. It felt like mine. Mine, because no one else's chaos was echoing in the corners. Mine, because I had said no and meant it. I didn't turn on my phone when I walked in. I left it on silent. I brewed tea and pulled a blanket over my lap, sitting on the couch in the soft light of the Christmas tree. There were no gifts underneath, no family members asking what size I wore or what I brought to the table. Just silence. And stillness. Then, sometime past midnight, the voicemails started rolling in. I didn't listen at first. I watched the numbers rise 5, then 12, then 20. I let them stack, each one a digital echo of a world I no longer had to answer to. But when curiosity finally got the better of me, I played them in order, one after the other, like a grim little Christmas concert. The first was from Elise. "Cass, this is going too far. Mom hasn't stopped crying, and Dad's barely said a word. Just, I don't know. Can you just call and fix this? It's not that deep." The next was Dana. "So now you're punishing everyone? Over what, some bills? You really need to learn how to let things go. Family doesn't keep score." Then came Blake. His voice was low, tight. "You embarrassed everyone. You think this makes you look strong? It makes you look bitter. No one asked you to take all that on. You did it for control, not kindness." That one made me pause. Control? As if covering for their financial mess for years was some kind of power play. As if I'd wanted anything other than peace. But I didn't delete it. I kept it like the others. Then, finally, Mom's message came through. Quiet. Flat. Not the venom I expected, but something worse, defeat. "You didn't have to do it like that. I know we haven't said thank you enough. Or maybe at all. But you didn't have to humiliate us. I don't know if we can come back from this. Merry Christmas, Cassidy." I let the silence hang for a long time after that. My tea had gone cold again. The next day, Christmas Day, I woke up not to a flurry of texts or a call begging me to come over, but to silence. That absence, once terrifying, now felt like space. Room to breathe. I took myself to the park. Watched kids in puffy jackets chase each other across the snowbanks. Watched strangers exchange small wrapped gifts and thermoses of cocoa. I didn't feel alone. I felt untethered. Later that afternoon, I checked my phone again. This time, something new. A message from my father. Just 2 lines. We've started sorting the bills. I didn't realize how much you carried. I'm sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. I saved it. Then another text appeared. One that made me stop walking entirely. Blake, I read the binder. I didn't know. I mean, I knew, but I didn't get it. I won't ask again. I'm sorry. I stood on the edge of the frozen pond, staring at the screen. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't absolution. But it was something I had thought I'd never get, acknowledgement. Even from him. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed the silence to last just a little longer. To stretch across the snow and the years and all the ways they'd made me feel small. I went home, made dinner for one, lit a candle and played a movie. Halfway through, a memory flickered, me, 15 years old, baking cookies while Blake stole the credit, while Mom posted his photo instead of mine. It didn't sting like it used to. It felt distant, softened by time. By the time I went to bed, my phone was still quiet. No new messages. No drama. Just the soft hum of the heater and the gentle glow of Christmas lights outside my window. I slept better than I had in years. The morning after Christmas felt like waking up in another life. There was no rush. No list of people to check in on. No half-panic texts about what time dinner was or whether I could swing by the store for one more thing someone forgot. Just light slipping past the curtain, calm and golden, and the sound of the kettle beginning to whistle. I padded to the kitchen in socks, poured myself tea, and sat down to review my budget, not for anyone else, just for me. The numbers were small but honest. For once, every dollar had a name, and none of those names belonged to Blake or Dana or a parent pretending it was a short-term emergency. The binder stayed on the shelf, untouched but still visible, a quiet reminder that I wasn't crazy, that the story I lived had happened even if no one else had ever validated it before. When my phone finally buzzed, I didn't jump. I didn't feel that clutch of anxiety that used to twist in my gut. I simply reached over, turned it over, and read the name on the screen, Mom. One message. No apology this time. Just an invitation. Dinner tomorrow. Just us. If you want. No expectations. I didn't answer right away. I let it marinate. Let the part of me that still longed for a version of family that wasn't soaked in guilt and quiet bitterness sit with it. Instead of replying, I got dressed, pulled on my coat, and walked. The streets were half buried in snow. It was the kind of cold that bit through your scarf and turned your breath into clouds. I wandered into the local bookstore, the one I never had time for because I was always too busy fixing someone else's crisis. Inside, it was warm and smelled like paper and coffee and something cinnamon sweet from the cafe tucked in the back. I took my time, touched spines, read blurbs, bought a novel I'd been eyeing for months. A book I'd never allowed myself to get before because it wasn't necessary. Outside, I texted Mom back, maybe. She didn't push. Just sent a heart. Not a guilt trip. Not a sigh wrapped in punctuation. Just a single, quiet reply. I went home. Made pasta. Played music low. And sat down with the binder again, not to open it, but to slide it into a drawer. I didn't need it in plain sight anymore. I knew what it held. And now, so did they. That night, Blake texted again. Just 3 words, I meant it. It didn't undo everything. But it didn't need to. What I needed wasn't repayment or even resolution. I needed them to sit with the truth. To stop rewriting it. And maybe, just maybe, to stop asking me to carry it alone. When I arrived at my parents' the next day, the house looked different. Not because anything had changed on the outside, but because I was seeing it without the fog of expectation. Without the hunger for approval that had defined every visit before. Mom opened the door. No makeup. No pearls. No parade. Just her. She looked smaller somehow. Realer. The kitchen smelled like garlic and onions and something baking. It smelled like effort. We didn't hug right away. Didn't launch into apologies. We just stood there for a second, then walked to the table together. Dinner was simple. Pasta. Bread. A salad that had clearly been chopped by someone who didn't do it often. But it was the most honest meal I'd had at that table in years. At one point, Dad reached for the salt and said, "We set up autopay." No other explanation. No dramatic speech. Just a quiet acknowledgement that they were doing it. Handling it. Later, when the plates were cleared, Mom sat down across from me and said, "You are right." That was it. And I realized I didn't need anything more. Not a tearful apology. Not repayment plans. Not even a full confession. Just that. The truth, spoken aloud, without denial or defensiveness. We talked carefully, like people walking barefoot over broken glass. There were still sharp places. Still old wounds. But something had shifted. Before I left, Mom walked me to the door. She held my coat in her hands for a moment, then said, "I saved some of your ornaments. The ones you made in school. They're in the closet. I thought maybe you'd want them for your tree." I nodded. Not because I needed them, but because it felt like an offering. A soft one. Not transactional. Just human. As I drove home, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt grounded. Solid. Like someone who had finally stepped out of the story she'd been cast in and started writing her own. I got home, hung up my coat, lit a candle, and pulled the book from my bag. Sat down, opened the first page, and started reading. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. I was just a woman. In a room of her own. On a winter night. At peace. And that, I realized, was the real ending. Not the storm. Not the showdown. The peace that followed.